And ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Gnostic Media Podcast, UnSpun episode. I think this is 97.
Yeah, that's what I
Welcome.
saw.
Tonight, joined by Bryan Nova Brey, who's been in the Facebook chat room for, I don't know, a long time. How long has it been now, Bryan?
A couple of years, I think. I got our mutual friend Michael introduced me to your work a number of years ago, back when I was doing caretaking on a ranch, and dove right into Trivium with my son. And it's been a huge game changer in our world. He's swinging hard in his U.S. history classes, and he digs in, man. He gives the real grammar.
Well, let's see. You or your girlfriend had mentioned to me about doing a presentation, and I didn't even realize you had material. I'm just caught up in my own stuff. And
Sure.
so you sent it to me, and it looks very interesting. Definitely worth taking a look at as far as possible operational systems, game theory, things like that. I'm interested to see if it's to figure out if, how it plays out, in society and real life, or, if it's a way, if it's possible that it could be cart before the horse. I don't know. I'm just interested in seeing more of it. So anyway, Bryan, welcome. And how do we describe your work?
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's really good to be on here. I know I asked you about presenting probably more than a year ago, and I get that we're busy. And the timing's perfect. I'd love to have the audience find some interest in this. Effectively, what MythMatrix is, it's a tool for analyzing media. That's just one side of it, that you can look at stories and film and figure out how they fit into 5 pairs of story patterns. But the addition to that is that you can also use it to relate to others. So if you understand if you understand the mechanics of like a rites of passage tale, and you meet somebody who's going through a death passage or an addiction passage or something, you can relate to them because you have a whole bank of movies, as well as understanding your own rites of passage stories, to connect and be like right there with them of what they're going through, and probably offer some pretty good advice based on successful films. And then the third thing is you can chart out your own life stories. So when you see how all these patterns come together, you'll say, oh, all right, not only have I lived certain life chapters, but when you see how it integrates into our world, there are higher tribes or higher degrees, like a full triumphant is within the life is great stage. And so you could plan out, okay, I would like to live into a full triumphant tale. I'm going to start sketching that out. And so I hope that the audience gets a lot out of it, and that they are able to be the hero of their own life story. They're able to dissect stories from other people and probably help them improve it or connect and relate. And one of the easiest things is just by watching movies. It doesn't mean that they're not exciting or entertaining anymore, but if you're watching it a second or a third time, like with your children, you can point out the midpoint, the all is lost, the dark night of the soul. You can pick up on things where it's just like clockwork how it works out. And that gives you not only a deeper understanding, but when you share it with your children, they get a deeper understanding as well.
So how did you come along with this idea for MythMatrix?
Well, it started simply enough because I was just going to try to write a script. I had a script concept in mind called Exodus Island. It was about a Las Vegas chef who lost everything, but he inherits an island from his best customer. And he goes there thinking his life is set, that he's going to have everything. And in fact, he winds up on a barren island and he has to start from scratch. And he meets a love interest. She owns a nursery. She can grow anything, but neither of them can build anything. So that's where the comedy points were in it. And I came to Hawaii to actually follow that script out. So I developed it first with just writing a script. And because I'm pretty heavy intellectual, I got deeper and deeper on the research. And I realized that a lot of what I was learning for writing a good script was totally applicable for having a great life. So all this decade long of personal development work started to come together. And I said, wait, I can take the mechanics that work on making an interesting characters, meaningful story pattern, and entertaining plot, and I can apply that to my own life. And so that's how MythMatrix came together, because it was started with scripts and it realized that you could put it into your life as well. And that's where it is.
Yeah, so you're in Hawaii and
yeah, living off grid.
Living off grid out in Hawaii, out in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into, you've got a slide presentation that we're going to go into, and you've got a lot to cover. So
I do. I have a significantly long slide. A lot of them I click through quite quickly, so I wouldn't worry about that. So far, it's been clocked at about an hour and 10 to an hour and 20 minutes, and then I hope we have time for questions, or you can interject at any time and we can go on a tangent.
Cool. All right. Well, what I'm going to do when you share a screen is I'm going to try to put it so you're up in the corner while you're speaking, and I'll probably be off screen. We'll see how it goes as we progress through it.
Okay, sounds great. I'll click over on there.
All right. There's going to be a delay here, folks, while he switches over.
All right.
All right. So you're all set to go, man.
Okay. Mute just 1 second here. It's going to be a lot of talking, so I just had to get a sip of water.
Yeah, you don't need to mute it. I just sit here. I'll take a drink during the show. It's whatever,
That's great. So yeah, a big welcome to the audience here, and thank you for tuning in for Jan and I to run through MythMatrix, something that I've put over 5 years of studying film theory and over a decade of personal development has culminated in this work, and I hope you get a lot out of it. I look forward to your feedback. I'm going to open with this scene, if you're familiar with it, when Neo meets the creator, and there's a huge bank of TVs, and this is probably the way anybody would approach MythMatrix at this point, that they're just a whole bunch of screens, and when you're looking at movies or films, it's just a ridiculous amount of information. Where do you get signal, and where is the noise? Stay tuned, because by the end we get to this, you're going to see a pattern for every single media that's ever presented to you. You'll know and understand where it fits and where it belongs. And most likely it doesn't even fit in being worth being watched, it's likely.
I'm going to move you to the other side here. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. So I was born Bryan Nova Thigpen. Thigpen means thief of coins, thief of gold coins. I was born in 1973 in San Jose, California. My father left between the ages of 2 and 4, and I was raised with my half-brother and a single mother. I changed my last name to my maternal grandfather's last name, Brey, when I turned 18. I graduated valedictorian and international baccalaureate from San Jose High Academy in 1991, and I attended and graduated with a degree in political science from UCLA in 1995. I worked at yahoo.com during the dot-com gold rush, and I moved to Las Vegas, and I became a real estate agent and a broker during the real estate boom of 2002 to 2008. I moved to Hawaii in 2010 to live off-grid, find community, and raise a family. So that was the who of the grammar. This is the what. So the what is MythMatrix? It's an educational training and an open source production development group. We gamify dynamics of film, including character, plot, and story pattern, to better understand and empower our true life story, as well as co-create interesting, meaningful, and entertaining projects for development or studio sale. A little bit more about it. MythMatrix is the culmination of over a decade of absorbing personal development books, workshops, seminars, intensive, and over 5 years studying film theory. And at its core, it's a pattern recognition tool. It combines and expands on the work of Blake Snyder in his Save the Cat series and the work of Dave Logan and his Tribal Leadership book. So where is the next question? I'm based in Kalapana. It's an area of Big Island, Hawaii. and it's one of the most pioneering and primal locations in the world. It's less than 10 miles from where the lava of one of the most active volcanoes, Kilauea, enters the ocean. And this is a shot less than 10 miles from our house. It has a big fire hose of lava going into the ocean, creating new land. So if you want to know more about the area or have interest, we do have quite a lot of visitors come out. You can search on Vimeo for Puna Coast, and you'll find a great video that goes through it. So when is the next grammar? And I started writing a movie script, as I said, called Exodus Island. I rattled through all that. And tragically, my ex-girlfriend deleted all my files and my emails from my laptop in a hate-filled rage because I had incriminating photos of her and her brash infidelity. So I lost over a year and a half of my creative work, but I persisted and I moved to Hawaii to live out my script and develop life-applied film theory, which then became MythMatrix. So why is the next question? So we're moving into the logic, and my motivation started because I wanted to make a great script, and what I realized is that I really wanted to make a great life. I saw how personal development, to make a great life, and film theory, to make a great movie, shared similar aspects. Namely, interesting characters, meaningful story patterns, and entertaining plots. And another big why, which is related to this movie, is that I've had a number of experiences in my life where my creative writing has become my lived reality. And that's not just living in Hawaii from a script that I started. In college, I feared this kind of capability of writing my reality, and I had some terrible stories that I wrote in college that became true. But now I plan and project in my future some successful science fiction stories where the good guys win and the bad guys get their comeuppance. And I invite our audience here to do the same. Lastly, the how. This is a pretty big slide to take in. I'm going to be going into detail over the how through the next hour with many, many slides. So this is just a quick snapshot. So MythMatrix works by identifying the common patterns of thousands of films, which I found fit into 5 pairs of story patterns. And it's matched by the 5 tribes in a bell curve distribution. So we're going to go into this in greater detail. I just want you to catch this. We're going to be going, I mean, this is over 500 movies into 5 pairs. You're going to really have a sense of how movies work and what they fit into. So Jan brought up a great question when we discussed before, what is gamify? In this line here, we gamify the dynamics. So I wanted to quickly go over gamify or gamification. Gamification is a concept which suggests applying game mechanics, design, and functionality and appeal to something that's not considered a game. The goal of gamification is to make it more engaging and entertaining by adding a gaming edge to it. And some aspects of gaming can be achievements, hidden bonuses, countdowns, progression, quests, and statuses like leaderboards. Here's a quick search on Google Trends of gamification. It started 2010 roughly. The term started to come into rise. Notice that it hasn't crashed here. It's actually still terminology. It's being used. On a lot of keywords, you'll have it peak in popularity and then drop off. So this term is actually has some staying power. Also pulling up interest by region. I kind of want to know what's going on in South Africa. You can see that there's a major hot spot there for searching gamification. And then what are related topics? You'll find that gamification relates to education or learning or even business. And then there's examples and there's gamification design. So that just gives you a pretty good insight to gamification, and we'll carry on. I'm going to give you a number of examples of gamification in our modern world. Here's the first one. It's called Fold It. This is a puzzle game that made a breakthrough in AIDS research the scientists couldn't solve. For 15 years, many of the top PhD scientists in the world were trying to decipher a crystal structure for one of the AIDS-causing viruses, and they couldn't solve it. So luckily, the University of Washington Center for Game Science collaborated with the biochemistry department and created Fold It. It's an online puzzle video game about protein fold it. Now it uses game-like puzzle interface that allows people from all over the world to play and compete in figuring out various protein structures that fit the research criteria. And to everyone's surprise, with over 240,000 players registered for the game and competing, a solution to the structure was found in 10 days. So it was a major breakthrough in the AIDS research field. So you had 15 years on one side, you gamify it, and it was solved. At least one of the problems was solved in 10 days. So there's a huge upside for gamification. Next one is an example called Super Better. It was a tool created by game designers and backed by science. Playing Super Better helps build personal resilience, the ability to stay strong, motivated, and optimistic even in the face of difficult challenges. And it says resilience has powerful effects on health by boosting physical and emotional well-being. Also, resilience helps you achieve your life goals by strengthening your social support and increasing your stamina, willpower, and focus. And that every aspect of the game is designed to harness the power of positive emotion and social connection to help you improve your life. So this is yet another example of gamification in an app that's doing quite well. Very similar, this one's called Photocracy. It has a gaming, a social media edge. You can get points, leaderboards, statuses. It says here it's an online game and social network that aims to use gamification to help their users improve their fitness. Here's an interesting model. It's called GIFGAF. It's basically a phone company. It's a mobile phone service within a unique business model. The idea is that every service is provided by the users of the community, from sales to customer support. So you buy a SIM card from one of the members, and then they get points. And then when you request any kind of support at their forum, a member supports you, and then they get more points, and these points can be converted into cash. So there's a gamification even in business. Here's Club Psych, a TV show, had their merchandise sales. It allows that you could get points for challenges, new levels, downloads. There'd be leaderboards and things like that. Overall, though, their traffic on the network increased 30%, their merchandise sales by 50%, and page views by 130%, and that their content was shared 300,000 times on Facebook and reaching 40 million users. Next to that, I found out that Cartoon Network does the same thing. They have leaderboards and statuses and points and badges, and they use gamification to roll out their series and TV shows. Last one, this is a trippy one. Google Ingress, an alternative reality game, but Google uses the game to gather data to help players. Using augmented reality, the game divides players into two factions in a science fiction setting. The objective is to create control fields and capture portals. So it goes on more that this was, it uses this data and information on their side. So the gamification, this is kind of one of those negative examples, is that they're using it much to their benefit. And I just was throwing it out there because here's an example of gamification. And carrying on kind of in a similar route, the last example I have is America's Army. It's the #1 recruitment tool on the planet, they claim. It's they deployed a gamification concept to support their strategy. It's a free download. It's a multiplayer tactical shooter game where they have the opportunity to combat at a squad level with three firearms and a realistic approach. So this is another one where they win badges and they can participate and see if it just leads into recruitment. So this is the last example I have of gamification. So quickly to finish up gamification, because it does carry on here, is I want to say what are the 5 mistakes of gamification, because it's an important concept that you can apply it to movies and to your life. And the first mistake is to have unclear goals. And what I have here, it's gaming is effective at teaching resource allocation, decision-making, and trade-offs. It's effective at creating emotions that associate the game with the organization. And these elements are determined by the goals of the gamification program. Now, unclear goals, different contexts imply different goals, and gamification programs are effective only when the customer, player, person who's watching the media understand their purpose. So the goals will improve the motivation, and without clear goals, they'll easily lose their interest in your game, your movie, your brand. You could say even your life if you don't have clear goals. So you want to have these goals clear, and that the reward should be an integral part of your planning and development. So that's number one, the way to do it: clear goals for games, movies, and life. Mistake number two is poorly engineered game mechanics. So here's the way to test good game mechanics. You play the test for 5 minutes. If there's a confusion or frustration, then there's a problem in the game mechanics. So without good game mechanics, the next layer cannot succeed. The gameplay, the game experience builds on good mechanics. So I don't want to get too stuck into this because there's just 5 of them. Poorly engineered game mechanics, I'll go ahead. You want to make sure that you have clear and frustration-free, and that the best way to handle this is have a simple plot, but understand that we have complex characters in our life. And when we get further into MythMatrix and we're understanding and relating to other people's lives, you'll see that they are a complex character, obviously, but maybe what they're going through in their life at that point is a pretty simple plot. Last one, our third one is badly designed gameplay. Obviously, Zelda is great gameplay. Just was going to share that briefly. Entertaining for games and movies. It's really the simple test is, did the user, when they finish playing the game, do they play replay? Do they want to play it again? Mistake number 4 is failing to build motivation. And I had some funny examples here. Old game, Dragon's Lair. I had a terrible time building motivation in that game because kept dying. There's a new one I play with my son, or don't like to play, called Geometry Dash, and for the same reason, I just lose it all the time. So it doesn't build motivation for me. And the point here is that, especially for the player and the main character, you want to build motivation, and that's by having small wins to lift their spirit. Leveling up is something that you can do. Anything to help build the motivation. And mistake number 5 is disappointing rewards. It's either too many rewards or too easy. For some programs, they'll give you rewards on anything that you do, and you want to make sure that that they're, both the success and the failures are rewarding. Before we get into story patterns, is this history of media and cultural influence. There was an amazing slide that I came across, and I just wanted to share it, of why is gamification, why is this gaming important, why did I spend so much time on it? And here it is. So, we start out with large theater and plays and stage and audience. From there, we move into books. From books, we move into vaudeville. From vaudeville into radio. From radio into black and white movies. You could say color movies. We have black and white movies as well. Color TV, black and white TV, color TV. And then I just had this one here, all these classic 1980s films that were culturally relevant. We still refer to them today. And then right after that, of course, we get introduced to video games. And the important thing about video games is, for the first time, we have control over the inputs. So before, largely, everything was just one way. We're consumptive. The audience is consumptive of it. When we get to games and gaming, and why this is important, you see it in social media, you see it in other stuff, is that now you have the audiences giving feedback, can change the inputs so that we can get different outputs. And that's why there was so much spent on this, is that now the cultural influence from gaming has totally shifted, that more from media to movies to anything needs to be aware of a two-way interaction. All right. So we're at the start of story pattern. It's kind of a long section. It's a lot to take in. You might want to check the time on it, but I'm going to go through it as quickly as we can. And just remember, it's relatively simple because it's 5 pairs of 10 story patterns. So it's going to be pretty easy overall, even though it's a lot of information. So again, this was the combination of 2 works. Blake Snyder deserved a lot of credit here for Save the Cat series. Same with Dave Logan and Tribal Leadership of the 5 Tribes. So tribes are groups.
Let me just ask you: does Joseph Campbell have any influence on this?
I think Joseph Campbell for the hero's journey has a bit of the architecture. I know that there are other folks in the like how to write a script space that do a lot around the hero's journey. I think Blake Snyder's work is maybe informed by that, but the 15 beats that he does, and we'll cover that in the plot section, does not do the hero's journey.
Yeah, yeah, like Star Wars, etc., is really heavily based, obviously, on the hero's journey and all that, the power of myth. So
yeah,
anyway,
there's another level that we're going to start to see what those are as story patterns. It's epic golden fleece. We'll get to that. So tribes are groups of 20 to 150 people, and there are 5 stages of tribes. Stage 1 is the lowest. It produces people who do horrible things. Stage 1 has people who, I'm sorry, one second. I'm going to see if I can move mine over here so I get a better read on the slides as well. Yeah, that works. I don't know. Did that change anything on your side?
No, it's fine.
Okay, great. So stage 1 has people who systematically sever relationships from functional tribes in order to pull together with others who think alike. It's the culture of gangs and prisons, and it's filled with despairing hostility and alienation. People will do anything to survive, even undermine others. Oh, they say, in fact, life sucks. We go back. Stage 1 says, in effect, life sucks. Now, the 2 movies I found, the first one is Monster in the House. And now Monster in the House has 3 moving parts. Each one of these story patterns we're going to talk about has 3 moving parts. So we'll get into this. So Monster in the House is a monster, a house, and a sin. So the primal commandment is don't get eaten, right? Pretty easy. Now there must be a sin committed. Usually it's greed, it's monetary or carnal, prompting the creation of a supernatural monster that comes in like an avenging angel to kill those who've committed the sin and spare those who realize what the sin is. And the rest is run and hide and putting new twists on the monster's powers, and the way we say boo. So we're going to go into, this is the first series, and inside of it, Blake Snyder has that there's 5 subtypes of each of these. So we're going to be going over 50 movie poster slides like this. This first one is just pure monster. So I'll give our audience here a moment to take in some of these. Jaws, of course, is a classic. Alien. More currently would be the Jurassic World one. Men in Black is kind of the only comedic version of this one. I want to point that out. Next slide is domestic monster. Now, I personally have dealt with a domestic monster tale in my life. If you take a look here, Fatal Attraction, Poison Ivy, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Pacific Heights. These are pretty intense. Next one is a serial monster. So it's just if one of their monsters does really well and comes back over and over for whatever reason, they're not killed off, mainly box office success or failure. Serial monster. Next one is supernatural monster. And these were the only ones that really scared me when I was young. I was able to kind of deal with the other ones. But if something would come through in my dreams or could kill me in my dreams, like Nightmare on Elm Street, that was kind of scary for me as a young one. So supernatural monster. And then the last one is nihilist or nihilist monster. What's interesting about the nihilist monster is that it's a breakaway to a degree from the rule that there has to be a sin committed. There's not really a sin. Most of the people in here are innocent. They didn't do a sin or didn't participate with the sin. But in the nihilist monster, the only sin, if there's one there, it's the sin of ignorance. And I think that, Jan, you and I can both appreciate that there is, in fact, a sin of ignorance. And that's why we try so hard to get information out there and ask people to think critically.
Definitely.
Okay, carrying on. The second pair to the Life Sucks tribe is the Why Done It tale. Now, the Why Done It tale has the 3 moving parts of a detective, a secret, and a dark turn. Now, the audience is the detectives who, through on-screen hero surrogate, does the work and sifts through the information, and we're shocked by what we find. Evil, greed, and murder, unseen evildoers are responsible. So in this one, who is not as interesting as why. That's why it's called a why done it. It's not about the hero changing or the detective changing here. It's about the audience discovering something about human nature they did not think was possible before the crime was committed. And it seeks the innermost chamber of the human heart in discovering something unexpected, something dark, often unattractive, and answer the question, why? And I think, Jan, you and I chatted a little bit about your detective work and research and how you keep, uncovering things of unseen evildoers are responsible and how it's pulling you into this detective stories. So let's find the 5 subtypes here and see which one jumps out at you. I think the first one probably. Take a look at those. The subtype is called political why done it. Now, are all of these are these real? Like, are they really telling what's happening here, or is this just a cover up to try to obscure the real story? Anyway, political why done it, question to think about. I bet some in the audience have some good stories here.
Well, it's probably some of both. They tell a little truth while distorting it at the same time. Yeah. They usually follow that 66-33 rule,
Yeah, that's probably exactly it. Next is the fantasy why done it. Some fun ones in here. Sixth Sense was pretty mind-bending when that one came along. I like that one. Feel free to chime in if you see a movie poster that you like. This is the cop why done it. I think the only one appropriate for children there would be the Despicable Me 2.
Which one is that? I didn't see it.
Oh, it's kind of middle, upper.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a cop why done it. Fargo, Basic Instinct. I'm just saying some of these for people that are on audio. Maybe Silence of the Lambs is in here. Carrying on. A personal why done it. This is yet again. Remember I said the domestic monster is something that people could kind of relate to. Here's another one I think personal why done it people can relate to as well. If you are in that heavy in that energy of like life sucks and you feel alienated in your life, or you went through that in a life chapter, you may have a personal why done it tale. And by understanding these mechanics, you can kind of work with that a bit more and understand that story pattern. I remember I was really shooken up after seeing Memento. That's one of the examples here. Mystic River was also pretty disturbing. So,
not sure if I've ever seen Mystic River.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a good one. Last one is kind of cult following for it. It's the noir why done it. That classic detective and the femme fatale and the smoky and the blinds, and usually has odd lighting and stuff like that. So, yep, a lot in there. Chinatown is a classic that I could see on here. Mulholland Falls. The more recent one is Brick, but I haven't seen it. Okay, so the question here is, can you see the stage 1 tribe in these movies? And these are characters who do horrible things, characters who systematically sever relationships from functional tribes, characters from gangs and prisons, characters filled with despairing hostility and alienation, and characters who do anything to survive, even undermine others. So that's stage 1, life sucks. We'll move on to stage 2. Stage 2 is not as alienated like stage 1, but certainly separated. People behave as an apathetic victim or passively antagonistic and cynical. Usually they have a very few friends and are depressed about their life and work. They're often resigned or quietly sarcastic and passionless. Stage 2 says, my life sucks. So that's the distinction here. We went from all of life sucks to just recognizing it's just my life that sucks. So the first one we have is the out of the bottle tales. Now, out of the bottle has 3 elements of a wish, a spell, and a lesson. If it's a wish fulfillment tale, then the hero must be a put upon Cinderella who's so under the thumb of those around that we're really rooting for anyone or anything to get Cinderella a little happiness. And yet the rules say, and human nature dictates, that we don't want to see anyone, even the most underdog character, succeed for too long. Now, in a wish, eventually the hero must learn that the magic isn't everything. The lesson must be in the offing. A good moral must be included at the end. In a comeuppance version, the opposite set is applied. A guy or gal needs a swift kick in the behind, yet there must be something redeemable about them. It's a little trickier, and it must include a save the cat scene at the outset, one where we know that even though this guy or gal is a jerk, there's something in them that's worth saving. In comeuppance, so in the course of the tale, they get the benefit of the magic, even though it's a curse, and in the end, they triumph. So let's dive in. This first one we have, any guesses? This is Body Switch Bottle. So some classics. Tom Hanks in Big is obviously great. Let's see, 18 again, 13 going on 30, Freaky Friday, Vice Versa, All of Me, Father Like Son. There's some fun ones in there. Body Switch Bottle. Next one is Angel Bottle. Cocoon is a classic. Remember Bruce Almighty is pretty fun. Love Bug, Aladdin, Mary Poppins, Short Circuit. Next one is Thing Bottle. So instead of an angel or whatever, it's a thing, something that they can manipulate, like a remote control and click, or game board, Jumanji. The Last Mimsy is actually a great film, the UFO technology that they have access to. Love Potion Number 9 or Flubber. Here's the reverse, or the comeuppance version, is the Curse Bottle. Of course, the classic out of here is Liar Liar. There's also the Shallow Hal and let's see, Enchanted, The Craft, Devil's Advocate, Bedazzled. Surreal Bottle. These ones are pretty bizarre, but Groundhog Day was just such a good one. I often refer to that one. So good.
You know, I refer to that film constantly. So yeah, for sure.
There it is. It's a surreal bottle, a tale. Family Man's pretty good. The most recent one here is Midnight in Paris, but I haven't seen that. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and then the next of the pair is Rites of Passage tales. In a rites of passage, we have a life problem. We go about it the wrong way. And then finally, there's acceptance. So in essence, whether the take is comedic or dramatic, the monster sneaks up on the beleaguered hero, and the story is the hero's slow realization of who and what the monster is. Now, in the end, these tales are about surrendering, and the victory is won upon giving up to forces stronger than ourselves. The end point is that acceptance over humanity and moral is always the same. That's life. On Death and Dying, the structure of this story type is charted in the hero's grudging acceptance of the forces of nature that he cannot control or comprehend, and the victory comes with the hero's ability to ultimately smile. This first one we have is Adolescent Passage, Risky Business, Caddyshack, Pretty in Pink, Good Will Hunting, Dazed and Confused, American Pie, Clueless, American Graffiti. Next one is Addiction Passage, Barfly, Train Spotting, Clean and Sober, 28 Days. More modern one is Flight.
Nice sound effects there.
Yeah. The next one is Separation Passage. Jan and I, I'm sure, and our audience can resonate with this. Kramer versus Kramer, Bye Bye Love, Casablanca, Dinner with Friends, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, The War of the Roses, Sideways, Swingers. Midlife Passage, Up in the Air, or Lost in Translation, My Best Friend's Wedding, Upside of Anger, Weatherman, Living Out Loud, About a Boy, Bridesmaids. Anyway, Sunset Boulevard, there's a classic. So Midlife Passage, and then finally Death Passage, Dying Young, Descendants, Accidental Tourist, We Bought a Zoo, My Life, Precious, all that jazz, Leaving Las Vegas, Ordinary People. So, can you see the stage 2 tribe in these movies? These are characters who are separated, apathetic victim, passively antagonistic, or cynical characters, characters who have very few friends and are depressed about their work and life. Characters are often resigned and quietly sarcastic and passionless. Moving on. So also remember there's a bell curve. So we have kind of smaller tribes, not a lot of many. Now we start to get into stage 3. It's got a lot. It's got the largest distribution of folks here. So stage 3 is about the tribe of lone warriors. It's about personal domination, find a way to compete and win. I have to win, that winning is personal, that knowledge is power and I'll hoard it. And that many people park and stay in this stage. Stage 3 says, I'm great, with a sub thing of, and you're not.
Yeah.
You know, we'll go with the superhero tale. I think you'll really like the breakdown of superhero. The superhero has a special power. There's always a nemesis and there's a curse, right? It's an extraordinary character finds himself in an ordinary world. And it asks the audience to lend human qualities and sympathy to the super being and identify with what it must be like to have to deal with the likes of the little people, to get in sync with what it's like to be misunderstood. The superhero must deal with those who are jealous of his unique point of view and superior mind. And it's the exact opposite of Dude with a Problem that we're going to cover next, or after this series of 5 slides. So this first one, real life superhero, is the subtype. So we have Braveheart, Gandhi, Malcolm X, Raging Bull, Dustin Hoffman and Lenny, Aaron Brockovich, A Beautiful Mind, Passion of the Christ is in there. Next one is storybook superhero. You can take some of these in. Willy Wonka, Lion King, Little Mermaid, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mulan, the Harry Potter series, Happy Feet, Jungle Book, Chronicles of Narnia. Fantasy superhero, of course, The Matrix jumps out, Never Ending Story, Hook, V for Vendetta, Nightmare Before Christmas, some that are in there. Fantasy superhero. The people's superhero. So if it's not a real life superhero, but it's still supporting the people, you could have a people's superhero tale like Whale Rider, Mask of Zorro, The Patriot, Gladiator, Robin Hood, Greystoke, Casino Royale, like some of the James Bond series. Next one, comic book superhero. You know, obviously huge successful franchises are built on this. I bet if I did an analysis to find out how many superhero tales are out there, it's just trying to match that distribution, you know, that there are so many people in the I'm great and you're not, that these superhero tales really speak to that. So we got The Incredibles, Big Hero 6, Hulk, X-Men, Guardian of the Galaxies, Batman, Avengers, The Crow, Spider-Man. I mean, the list goes on. I could have covered this one with movies of superhero tales. So moving on to Dude with a Problem. So Dude with a Problem has an innocent hero, a sudden event happens, and a life or death battle. It has 2 simple working parts, an average guy and a problem. Something big which the average guy has to dig deep inside himself to conquer. So the more average the guy, the bigger the challenge. The badder the bad guy, the greater the heroics. And that the dude triumphs from his willingness to use his individuality to outsmart a far more powerful forces aligned against him. Keep that in mind, Jan. Okay, first one, spy problem. The Bourne Identity or Bourne series, 3 Days of the Condor, Paycheck, Enemy of the State, North by Northwest, Long Kiss Goodnight. Here's a children's one in there. Muppets Most Wanted is available. The Man Who Knew Too Much, Spy Problem. Next one, Law Enforcement Problem. Christmas classic there, Die Hard. Man on Fire, Harrison Ford in The Fugitive, or in Air Force One, Speed. A number of good ones in there. That was Law Enforcement Problem. Next one is Domestic Problem. And what do we have here? Enough, Perfect Murder, Misery, Sleeping with the Enemy, Cape Fear, When a Stranger Calls, Suicide Kings, and a recent one of Gone Girl. You might ask, well, what's different between a domestic monster and a domestic problem tale? Because now we're three, we're like for 1, 2, and 3, or at least a tribe apart from it. How are these related? And it really comes down to the innocent hero part. So there's no sin committed when you have a domestic problem versus when you're dealing with a domestic monster. There's been a sin committed, which has brought this monster in for the monster in the house. When you're dealing with a domestic problem tale, it's an innocent hero, a sudden event in a life or death battle. Next is epic problem. Lego Movie was great. Hunger Games, Armageddon, 2012, District 9, Poseidon Adventure, Volcano, which kind of relates to the next one. The last one is Nature Problem. You have Twister, Gravity, 6 Days, 7 Nights, All Is Lost, Open Water, Alive, Apollo 13. These are nature problem tales. So can you see the stage 3 tribe in these movies? We have lone warriors, we have personal domination, find a way to compete and win, and that you have to win and winning's personal, and that the knowledge is power and I'll hoard it. So anything to add here before I go into the last two?
Just keep going. I'm just sitting here observing.
Cool. Yeah, that we're gonna get lighter hearted here, and we both will appreciate it. So stage 4 is about stable partnerships and tribal pride. People are who are fully themselves, they're genuine, inspired, and happy. The culture emphasizes shared core values and interdependent strategies. The tribe always has an adversary, and the bigger the foe, the more powerful the tribe. So stage 4 says, we're great, and you're not. So we'll start with Golden Fleece tales. In Golden Fleece, you have a road, a team, and a prize. So any quest, mission, or treasure locked in a castle approached by an individual or group falls into Golden Fleece and has the same rules. Very often, the mission becomes secondary to the other more personal discoveries. The twists and the turn of the plot are less important than the meaning derived from the quest, the mission, or the heist. So the theme of every Golden Fleece movie is internal growth, and how incidents affect the hero is in fact the plot. It's the way we know that we're truly making forward progress. And it's not the mileage, it's the way the hero or heroes change as they go. And forcing those milestones to mean something is the writer's job. And for us, we got to make our milestones mean something in our life stories as well. So the first one here, some classics: Sports Fleece, Bad News Bears, Jerry Maguire, School of Rock, Dodgeball, Rocky, Remember the Titans, Longest Yards, Mighty Duck, the Hoosiers, Stand and Deliver, Cool Runnings. Buddy Fleece tales, all the Toy Stories, The Finding Nemo, Up, National Lampoon's Vacation, Spinal Tap, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, the great one of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the Hangover series, Thelma and Louise, Little Miss Sunshine, The Wizard of Oz are all in the Buddy Fleece tale. Then we have Epic Fleece, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Lord of the Rings, Master and Commander, Glory, True Grit, Apocalypse Now, Saving Private Ryan, National Treasure. So these epic fleece tales. Caper Fleece. So if there is kind of a got to steal something or a heist of some sort, you'd have a Caper Fleece version. Ocean's 11, Sneakers.
I had the guy on the show who wrote Ocean's 11.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
George Clayton Johnson.
Right on. Great movie. Oh, the interchange between those guys is a classic for just really, really well done. Usual Suspects, Reservoir Dogs, Quick Change, Inception, Argo, Great Escape, Pulp Fiction's in there, The Sting. You can also have a solo fleece. So even though it's in that third of We're Great, you can have solo fleece tales in here, such as... where's the classic? It's got to be in there. There it is. Corner, Castaway, Shawshank Redemption, Pursuit of Happiness, Walk the Line, Ray, Maria Full of Grace, Garden State, More recent one, Inside Llewellyn Davis. One that I hated when I was young was World According to Garp. I have no idea why my mom had me watch that movie at that age. It was just a horrible film. Anyway, carrying on. Buddy Love is the second of the pair. And in Buddy Love tales, we have an incomplete hero, a counterpart, and then a complication. So at first, the buddies hate each other, but their adventure brings out the fact that they need each other and they are, in essence, incomplete halves of a whole. Now, realizing this leads to even more conflict because who can tolerate needing anybody? And the all is lost moment occurs when there's a separation, a fight, a goodbye, and a good riddance. And it's just two people who can't stand that they don't live as well without each other, and they have to surrender their egos to win. And by the end of the film, for most films, surrender of the egos is what has happened. So often one of the buddies is the story's hero and will do all or most of the changing, while the other buddy will do slight or no changing. Catalyst buddy love tales are in which a being comes into one life, affects it, and leaves is a subset of the buddy love. So we'll show some of these examples. Pet Love, Benji, Black Stallion, Lassie, Free Willy, Airbud, Flicka, Black Beauty. A lot of these are the ones where you have a catalyst. The pet comes in, totally helps the hero transform, and then passes away or dies or some manner. I thought E.T. would be in here, but it identifies, I guess, somewhere else a little bit more. Next one is professional love. Could also be the buddy love of buddy love, but more often it's called professional love. It has like 48 Hours, Lethal Weapon, Tango and Cash, Frozen, Rush Hour, Wayne's World, Blindside, Starsky and Hutch. Some of the Star Treks are in there. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid would be that professional love. Oh, Wayne's World. How could I forget that one? All right, and the next one is rom-com love. This is when you think of most buddy love tales, I think rom-coms kind of come to mind first. Pretty Woman, Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, Something About Mary, Her, Failure to Launch, You've Got Mail, Notting Hill, Tangled, Silver Linings Playbook. Some great ones in there. Epic love. You get to a tale, epic loves. This is where you have like, I think Casablanca should be in here. Is it? Well,
Casablanca,
Titanic. Yeah, I thought Casablanca was in here. Well, it has Dr. Zhivago. What's behind there?
Is that it? Up,
Gone with the Wind.
Is that it up at the top there? Oh, no, that's Gone with the Wind. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Anyway, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Anyway, next, forbidden love. You'd asked a question of where can it possibly be engineered, and this is one of the first answers when I was going through the slides to take a look at possibly seeing more forbidden love tales showing up, because you can have kind of cute ones like Dirty Dancing and Beauty and the Beast and Splash that's a little kind of fantasy, maybe even Blue Lagoon, even though that was pushing it, but you may see an agenda push in here where you see more and more films showing up in this forbidden love tales. And Harold and Maude, Officer and a Gentleman, Benny and June, Romeo and Juliet. But you have Venus and Lolita, Brokeback Mountain, dynamics like that. So keep an eye on that. It's forbidden love. That's the fifth of the subtypes of buddy love. So can you see the stage 4 tribe in these movies? So movies are about stable partnerships, or they become stable partnerships by the end, or tribal pride, teams, winning teams, and that such. Characters become fully themselves. They're genuine, inspired, and happy. Certainly shows up often by the end of these movies. That movies emphasize shared core values and interdependent strategies. And that the tribe always has an adversary, and the bigger the foe, the better the heroics. That is almost classically what you can say for film theory, is that if you are going to take this team and put them up, you want to put them up against a big foe. All right. Last one.
Last slide.
Not
Or
last
last.
slide.
Okay, last section.
Story
Got it.
pattern.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So stage 5 is about innocent wonderment. In the tribe sense that we're all on the same team with the same goal, playing for the greater good. They explore infinite potential and how to have a global impact and make history. They're in a competition with what's possible rather than another tribe. Stage 5 says, life is great. So Full Triumphant Tales opens this up. It has a fool, an establishment, and a transmutation. The operating principle is to set an underdog fool against a bigger, more powerful, and often establishment bad guy. It has 2 simple parts, a fool and an institution for the underdog to attack. Watching a so-called idiot get the goat of those society deems to be the winners in life gives us all hope and pokes fun at the structures we take so seriously. Special fools offer us a glimpse into the life of an outsider. Did it come up on your side?
What's that?
I clicked on a slide and I don't see it on here yet.
It's still on the black one. Fool establishment transmutation.
Yeah. I'm going to see if we lost a connection, at least on, shows that it's there.
Huh. Well, what I can do is pull it up in PowerPoint. What slide is that?
106 on my slide.
106.
I wouldn't want you to have to take on this. What I could do is see why it's stuck on this slide if we pause for a second.
Well, I mean, yeah, where the audience is waiting for us is also just go as quickly as you can here.
Sure, yeah. Screen sharing is... So if I do, how about I do a stop share? It's back to us. We're saying a quick hello.
Yep, there we go. Hey, everybody.
Go back to here. Share this screen again. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to select it again.
There we go.
I'm back
Coming
here.
up. There you go. Now it's up.
Got it. So, Jan, I'm thinking you here.
What's that?
Political fool.
Political fool. Okay.
Political fool. King's speech. Meet John Doe. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. Dave. One of the classics is Being There. Is a really good one. If you dive in and take some of these films, probably a lot of them are on Netflix, and see them. See if you could chart out for yourself, Jan Irvin as political fool, and it's a noble pursuit. And it'd be a very entertaining tale. Okay, the next one is Undercover Fool. You got Miss Doubtfire, Trading Places, Working Girl, Miss Congeniality, Tootsie is in there. Society Fool, Forrest Gump, Masks, Shine, Awakenings, Amadeus, I Am Sam, Sling Blade. Fool Out of Water. This Fool Out of Water is a really fun one because not only do you take a fool, but then you put them totally out of their element. And this is where you have like Legally Blonde, Elf, Almost Famous, Crocodile Dundee, Coming to America, House Bunny, Enchanted, Mr. Mom, Austin Powers is in here, Private Benjamin, My Blue Heaven, and Beverly Hills Cop. Daddy Daycare is a fun one too. Next one is The Sex Fool. Roxanne, Peter Sellers and the Party, World's Greatest Lover, Bridget Jones' Diary, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Lover Boy are in there, Down with Love, or The Guru, or some of these ones. Then the last of it is Institutionalized. This would be the 10th one. In Institutionalized Tales, we have a group, a choice, and a sacrifice. It honors the institution and exposes the problem of losing one's identity to it. Each tale has a breakout character whose role is to expose the group goal as a fraud, usually told from the point of view of a newcomer who is being brought in by someone more experienced. The group dynamic is often crazy and even self-destructive. Ultimately, these stories come down to one question: who's crazier, me or them? All one needs to understand is how sacrificing oneself for the group can be an insane proposition. And the 5 subtypes of institutionalized are here. First one, military institution. It includes Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, A Few Good Men, Top Gun, Dances with Wolves, MASH, Hurt Locker, Avatar. Military institution. Family institution of Goodfellas, The Godfather, Boys in the Hood, Do the Right Thing, American Beauty, Meet the Parents, Royal Tenenbaums. Business institution, one of my favorites, Office Space, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Glengarry Glen Ross, 9 to 5, Boogie Nights. Mentor institution, Training Day, Wall Street, Dead Poet Society, Swimming with Sharks, The Departed, Devil Wears Prada. Issue institution. Issue institution are interesting and deserve a little extra recognition. If you have a movie that's going to have an ensemble cast, usually it will show up in a issue institution, such as Magnolia, The Big Chill, Breakfast Club, Nashville, Love Actually, Friends with Money, Babel, Crash. So can you see the Stage 5 tribe in these movies? Their characters filled with innocent wonderment. Often they have a conflict on being on the same team with the same goal, conflict of who is playing for the greater good. Characters are either wittingly or unwittingly explore infinite potential, and they have a global impact and make history. Characters and the movie itself is in competition with what is possible for humanity. So we'll pause for a second before we go any further, because that was a whole lot to get through of these 5 pairs. I threw up this image here of meeting the creator, and now you're starting to see that there's an organization to all the story patterns in the background. I just have 2 more sections that are going to go very quick. I'll do a brief thing about plot and a brief thing about character, and then we'll go into a summary, and then we'll be done. Does that sound good?
All right.
Okay, cool. So plot. Before I met Jan, I actually was into integral theory and Ken Wilber's work. I only have this one little section before I found out he was dirty, and it has this individual interior and exterior or group, and the I, the we, the it space. It might still have some interest, but it doesn't necessarily apply. But if we do more episodes, or if anybody wants to join on the intensive, I really do go very deep into plot, and I go very deep into character. But at this point, we're going to just go to this upper right corner for Blake Snyder and a little bit of Kim Hudson. So Blake Snyder, as I mentioned, the Save the Cat series, there's his trilogy. He said something really important, and it resonated for me, and I hope with our audience as well, that we're looking for movies where the hero has the longest emotional journey, the biggest, baddest enemy, the most at stake, and the most primal goal. And that was one of those things that clicked for me. I go, wow, I've got that going on in my life too, that it feels like I have the longest emotional journey here. At times I've interacted with some of the biggest, baddest enemies, that I've had the most at stake, which usually could be death or a spiritual death. And that the most primal goals, sometimes it was just surviving and getting through the month with my son and I. So what Blake is known for, aside from the 10 pairs of story pattern, or the 5 pairs that we talked about, I do want to clarify, he called them genres, and he just called them 10 genres. And he did recognize that superhero and dude with a problem were a pair. What I was able to say is that the rest of them paired up into pairs. And I don't call them genres, I call them story patterns, because I think that you could put any one of these story patterns into different genres, like a sci-fi or a Western or something, and that these specific story patterns line up, and that they then align with these tribes, this distribution of the 5 tribes. And that's where a lot of my work. So I want to be clear about the credit and then what my work has done. The second thing I love to give credit to Blake Snyder for is what are the 15 beats. And you had asked about the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell being involved in this. And I think that Blake did an even better job to organize and break away from the hero's journey to say that these are the most important beats to have in your movie. And so we have the 15 beats on screen. I'll go through them real quick. The page number, which is in parentheses, is also kind of the minute count too. So usually you open with an opening image, and why that's important is because it's going to be the bookend to the closing image, and typically it'll be the opposite. So whatever the opening image is, by the end of the movie, the closing image should be the reverse of it. And I'm thinking not just metaphorical, but you'll see lots of examples through movies where you do have an opening image that sets the tone, and that the tone is reversed and certainly much better by the end of the film. The setup happens between pages 1 and 10. That typically goes to the hero at work, at home, and at play. It gives you a good understanding of who the hero is, and so you start to have this empathetic connection to them. The theme stated is around the 5-minute mark, and that's usually spoken to the hero from an outside character. So a character will tell them, they usually brush it off or not really absorb it, but that's the theme that then gets questioned and answered throughout the whole film. The catalyst comes in right around 12 minutes. That kicks the story in. That's the thing that, oh boy, now that this happens, they have to deal with it, which then leads into the debate. The debate from 12 to 25 is they try to answer it, like quickly solve the problem, but realize that it's going to bring them into something even larger. So usually the questions that the audience has get answered in the debate of trying to solve the problem quickly, and they can't, which then leads into the break into 2 and the B story and the fun and games. All of those is when you go from, you have your thesis, you go to your antithesis world. So you had your kind of setup world of how you're managing it, but then it goes to the upside down world. And that's what's really fun and exciting for most movies. The movie poster typically would be at that fun and games section. If there's any set pieces, popular things on the movie poster that they're doing, those will all show up within the fun and games. Okay, and then you get to the midpoint. The midpoint is either a false victory or a false defeat for the hero. Then you have the bad guys close in for about 20 minutes. There's the all is lost beat, which I've mentioned is really important. You got to really hit that all is lost so that the dark night of the soul lands. Like the hero is now worse off now than he or she was at the beginning of the film. And it really pulls on the heartstrings of the audience, and it gets them ready for the third act, which is the break into 3, the finale, where you storm the castle, you find that the princess has been moved, you have to come up with a whole new plan, you got to dig deep down again, then you got to dig down deep even further to really make it all happen, and then you get your final image. So that's the essence of all movies. I wanted to give some direction if people are really enjoying this and they want to find their favorite movie and get the 15 beats on it. He wrote a book, his second one in the trilogy, Save the Cat Goes to the Movies. You can find some in there. You can also go to the savethecat.com. There's a very active audience. Unfortunately, Blake Snyder passed away a number of years back, but he's a super active audience that keeps updating and putting new movies that come out. They'll do beat sheets and breakdowns of them and post them on there. You can also find them in alphabetical listing, so it makes it easy to find them. He's got 50 beat sheets in the book, and there's over 100 beat sheets on his website. So there's a good chance if you have a favorite movie that really resonates with you, go find it. You'll be better for it, and I think you'll really enjoy it.
One of my favorite movies. Oh shoot! Now I've forgotten the title of it. Oh man,
we'll figure it out. What is it?
It's right on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of it. It's a British comedy, though. Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a beat sheet of Hot Fuzz in there. We'll give it a shot. And you can find out which one it is, which genre. I say story pattern, but they'll have what genre it fits in and stuff like that. Okay, the last short segment here, which our audience is going to get a lot out of, is just a quick insight to character. So in character, I like to borrow from the book of Kim Hudson's. This is The Virgin's Promise. I think I mentioned to you, Jan, she does a counterpart to the hero's journey. which is the Virgin's Promise tale. So instead of going outside, like the kingdom is all great, but we have an enemy coming in. So I'm going to be the hero and I'm going to defend the kingdom. What she studied and says that in the Virgin's Promise tale, that there's something wrong with the kingdom and that she finds her light, which is some expression that's being suppressed within the kingdom. She gets to try on the role that dresses the part, so to speak. She gets caught shining. She then goes in the wilderness and she chooses her light, and that the kingdom has to reorganize to then accept her new choice, you know? So this is a Virgin's Promise tale, and it does have resonance. Maddie has been reading through it and she just loves the Virgin's Promise. She finds a lot of resonance with it. And I like them. I think that you can write more Virgin's Promise tales as well, but don't go too far or else you're just trying to destroy the kingdom and the civilization that we've been working hard to build up, you know? So that as a little caveat. Back onto this, character archetypes, want to just briefly mention because she goes over it really well in this book. So she says the first risk of life is to stand on your own, to take up your individual power. And it's a challenge of developing a relationship with yourself and the work of the Virgin and the hero. The next challenge is to use your power well and join in partnership with another person, as the lover king and the mother goddess must do. And the final challenge is to join the cosmos, to focus on giving back and letting go and seeing the beauty of one's insignificance. This task is guided by the crone and the mentor. So she says, you can refuse to take up these tasks, but nobody gets off the planet without facing these challenges. That audience find meaning and are entertained by this quest for individuation. So to highlight this, I'm going to just a quick slide on the light side for feminine, female, and women. Bottom row, we have the Virgin, some images of the Virgin. The second row up from the bottom would be lover, queen goddess examples. And then the top row would be images of the crone. On the right side, there's an example of them all painted together of this natural maturing from virgin to queen goddess into a crone. On the flip side for men, we have here the hero across the top row. We have the lover king in the middle row. And we have the mentor on the bottom row, examples of mentors. Just wanted to share that. The shadow side, of course, want to bring that out. The whore is the opposite to the virgin. The coward would be the opposite to the hero. The femme fatale is the opposite to the queen goddess. So this would be the sapping of energy and not honoring the relationship, femme fatale. You have the tyrant instead of the lover king that rules by force rather than cooperation. You have the hag. The hag is an interesting because instead of being the crone and giving good energy, usually they're the ones that try so hard to stay beautiful or play tricks. And usually they'll steal the lover king from the queen goddess and try to take partnership with him when it's shouldn't be doing that, you know. The miser would be the flip side then to the mentor. And it's not just money. They can withhold knowledge, opportunity, mentoring. They can withhold that. In an intensive, or if we do any further, I can go deeper into character connection, how you have an emotional impact and how that's important both in life and in film and media. There's stages, there's things that you want to do to create an empathetic connection from an audience to connect with the main character. We'd go through that. I have a little blurb here on comedic characters because I think it's really important to be in touch with our comedic side. And I'll share with Steve Kaplan. So he says, comedy is about an ordinary guy or gal struggling against insurmountable odds without many of the required skills and tools with which to win, yet never giving up hope. And in fact, that becomes the equation of his comedy equation, is that it's an ordinary guy or gal struggling against insurmountable odds without many of the required skills and tools with which to win, yet never giving up hope. I've got a big red circle around that yet never giving up hope because I want you to keep that in mind when we get to one of the last slides of why it's so important. I do a little bit into character fears. There's author David Weishart using the Enneagram that he found that if you focus on what the fear of your central characters are, or if you have multiple characters and they have crisscrossing fears, it's a great way to explore them. And so I utilize that same information to look at our own life and to actually connect with others of what is their core fear, and either relate to it, help alleviate their fear, help to address it directly. But again, that would be for another time. So here we are in the summary. Zip through that. I gave some examples, define gamification, and I gave some examples of gamifying and gamification. I want the audience to keep that in mind. It applies to life. It also applies if they have a movie, an app, anything they want it. They kind of have this in mind to be able to gamify it. We went through the mistakes and certainly gave the solutions. It's a good section if you want to apply that in your life as well. Make sure you have clear goals, have good gameplay, keep your motivation going, give yourself good rewards, even for failing if you tried, that type of stuff you can apply in life as well. This slide, which is cultural impact and influence, that we know that once we got to games, that we now have inputs and outputs. It's not just a one-way street anymore. We went through story pattern, and here's the summary on it. We did Life Sucks, Monster in the House, and Why Done It Tales. We did My Life Sucks, Out of the Bottle, and Rites of Passage. The I'm Great, The Superhero and Dude with a Problem. We're Great, The Golden Fleece and Buddy Love Tales. And then Life is Great, Full Triumphant and Institutionalized. I want to make a quick comment on institutionalized because it's kind of interesting, especially in how can it be within Life is Great when we have some pretty dark, disturbing stories, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, A Few Good Men and stuff like that in our institutionalized tales. And the idea is that we may have pretty bad institutions right now, which we're exploring or we're making light of or we're seeing in films and movies. But that doesn't mean that we cannot create positive, good, Life is Great type institutions, which would then go into these Life is Great films. So another answer to where would MythMatrix in this work be hijacked is if you keep putting crap into the institutionalized tales, it's going to be difficult for people to imagine beyond. And they're not all crap tales. I mean, Office Space is a great example of one where you burn the thing down and you carry on. And there's other funny ones that are in there and enjoyable too, certainly in the Full Triumphant. But if it stays within this context and that the success of the movies, we just don't push the envelope, I think that's another way that we can be held back. So that's why I'm encouraging the audience of who wants to write more movies and films, that there's a huge section available to write positive, entertaining, enjoyable, Life is Great type films. So with that, I just wanted to share that when I run these through my mind, I usually put them in this columns like this way. Just like this. So you have the Life Sucks, My Life Sucks, I'm Great, We're Great, Life is Great. And then you can then imagine that bell curve goes along here and you kind of see where am I in my life and what life chapters and, am I having more We're Great stories and how much of my life chapters are showing up as Life is Great. I covered plot briefly with this slide and Blake Snyder, his 15 beats. And wanted to give a real gem here. Out of my study, I found that there's only one rule that you can't break when you're making a film and a movie. And that one rule is don't be boring.
Don't jump the shark.
Yeah. And you can apply it to life, right? Like this is where that transition happens. And I know that we all have gone through major boring times in our life. And I'm not saying that we always have to fill it with some hedonistic pursuits to make it entertaining, because that's not the answer either. We know that it's got to be interesting, meaningful, and entertaining. There's another degree. And so I think through understanding story patterns and kind of painting our life story, we can make that happen for ourselves. So that one rule, I want people to really resonate. Don't be boring. Flip side is be interesting. Make an interesting life. All right. And then we covered character. I wanted to share the second real good gem that people can take away is there's one switch that I want you to know that you can go from a dramatic character to comedic, or you can crush your comedic hopes and make it a dramatic moment by giving up hope. So the switch is to never give up hope. But if you do, it happens in most comedies, it's funny, especially in the second act and everything. And then that, right at that tail end of the second act, you'll have that main character just gives up their hope. They give up hope. And then that's where that beat is, that all is lost in the dark night of the soul. It switches from a comedic to a dramatic tale at that moment. And luckily it should turn around by the third act and carry on. So that hope and being hopeful is the switch. It can switch the tone of one's life story from comedic to dramatic, or from dramatic to comedic. So I hope that you and I and our audience all gets that we got to maintain a good hopeful drive. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So gamify your life story is what I call it. You have to have meaningful story patterns. We've covered that in great detail. You want to have an entertaining plot. I could go into that at some point, or offline, or through the intensive, or whatever. Interesting characters. I do a little segment on that. So that's MythMatrix. I'm going to leave it with, well, this is one. So now I hope at the end of it, you see it more like this. You've got Neo and the creator, and you see all these screens in the back. And I bet that anybody now, if they drill in, they could see the patterns, figure it out, start to see how it all goes together. And I'm going to leave it with one last request here, is that MythMatrix, we cover, it's an educational training and an open source production development group. So part of my exercise on this is that I hope that I can help put the platform out there in an open source manner, that people will join me, that we can talk the same language, and I can help them develop their project. So if it, from a small media, short form, long form, if they have an exciting adaptation that they want to do, the rights to a book, friend's story, anything like that, a life chapter that they live through, this is where the open source side comes through. So you can tell that I gamify the dynamics of film, including character, plot, and story pattern, to better understand and empower our true life story, as well as to co-create interesting, meaningful, and entertaining projects for development, meaning that our group will help produce it and take it to audience, or we can studio sell it, and we could help with that as well.
You want to get rid of the screen share?
Yeah, let's do that.
And why don't we field some questions from the audience and stuff for a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
if the audience has questions, I know they threw up some earlier. Some were asking about, if it was related to some of B.F. Skinner's work. Somebody said Chinese government were looking into gamifying its citizens to punish and reward good and bad citizens, etc. So, how does this?
Yeah. Yeah, I've read a similar article about that. I think it's tied into how they want to bring along a version of a FICA score, like a credit score for them, of like how well behaved they are. So they want to go into behaviors outside.
There was a movie about that did something like that.
Scary. So what do you take out of this?
Well, it's interesting. It gives you some perspective, a way to look at things, just to see if where things are sitting at in your own life, etc.
Yeah. Not to get too personal, you and I think both have had domestic monster tales, right?
Oh, pretty much, yeah.
Either that or it's a domestic problem. Right?
When you look at it this way, though, is it used as a way to dismiss what really happened, or how does that do that? Does it take away the reality of it? Or how do you apply it?
Well, I've found that it allows me, instead of being emotionally charged when it comes up, that I can utilize that emotion to then direct it into kind of tell the tale.
Right.
So
I got a buddy who's in life sucks right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a few of us have a buddy. I'm not going to say his name right now, but
Yeah.
he's going through a life sucks period. So maybe he's watching this and he'll know it's him because he can maybe see this and go, "Oh, I can just ride the bell curve out and do something else tomorrow."
Yeah, I'll take the time to chime in and like a couple things. One, life sucks is all about alienation. So the best way that we can pull him out of that is that we move him from alienated to separated. So he'll deal with dynamics where he feels separated, but obviously when he has more friends connecting with him, we're pulling him up in the tribes. And the other add-on to this is that my research is leading into this exploration, and you and I have talked about this, of how each one of our years may be just kind of imprinted by, like, I'm 44 right now, and so I'm right in 4 and 4 is an 8, which would be a buddy love tale. I'm totally in a buddy love tale right now. And last year was 43. I was in a golden fleece. I had a success with a road team and a prize thing showed up. And Maddie had out of the bottle when she came to Hawaii, just totally was her year. And then now she has rites of passage and she's going through that too. So it's very subjective in that sense. So I'm not preaching it as a pseudoscience. It's just an interesting, does it provide utility for people to look at that? Like, where are they? And is it just because it's just a year that they're in, and that's kind of the resonance of it? Or are they really stuck there and they need friends like us to help them see their story? And, God bless them, have them write out what would it take to have that story come to an emotional catharsis where the audience themselves would feel good and to move on.
Is the movie industry using this to keep people from gaining understanding of their own lives, you think, or what?
Well, yes, I'd say yes. I think that we get most movies that get pumped out would keep following this, but typically you'll find that when you get to the we're great, just like I said, that life is great. It's kind of like they retard the real solutions when you get into a fool triumphant. Like, let's be honest, how many people being a fool would be that successful to change political institutions and, elites just by being themselves in truly authentic, life is totally possible way? Like, it's kind of far-fetched, right? So I found that Hollywood doesn't really give a lot of good solutions, especially in the life is great. They won't let the maturation go past the we're great, because the we're great still has some conflict with that other tribe. It doesn't get to that next stage where you can kind of let that stuff go and see the bigger picture.
It's like I don't know. I was gonna say it's like realizing the hero is you or something like that, and then you relax into it and realize everything's all right, or you solve the problem or get through it or whatever, and you're into the next phase.
Yeah, and here's an add-on to that. One of the things that I think of, because I don't have any, and if anybody wants to bring critique to MythMatrix as an analytical tool, I'm totally up for it, because I've turned this thing inside out and upside down, and I like to do that. So, for example, I like to think like, well, instead of it being a monster in the house tale, what if it was angels everywhere? What does that feel like? Now, obviously, our mind loves to solve problems. So part of the reason we think things are interesting is because we're going with the hero to kind of solve this problem. But you're pointing exactly at, if all we do in films is constantly push problems and problem solving, and we only accept their solutions, how far are we going to get?
Right. So somebody asked, can I ask Bryan if what he thinks is the worst type of story to be influenced by?
Worst type to be influenced by. Well, okay, this is a bit personal, but you already saw the not actual ex-girlfriend. She loves monster in the house, horror / films. She also watches unsolved mystery, like will literally leave the TV on with unsolved mystery type stuff. She was a horrendous person in my life. And I wish her the best. I want her to be a greater person for our son. And, you know, so it's a great question. It's tough for me to answer, but yeah, bottom of the barrel, because there's alienation in there. It's not just her being alienated, but what type of psyche are you dealing with? Like what's being engaged there? I'm not saying that they're fundamentally, it's good to enjoy it. It's good to get the heart racing and, you know, there every once in a while. But if I don't know, if you're just stuck in that, not only you're alienating yourself and alienating others, but I just kind of wonder about what does that mindset propagate?
Interesting. Somebody's complaining because we didn't discuss the Zionist influence in Hollywood. So, and this person has to raise some snide comment, Joe, after or during every show.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I could agree. I could look into it. I mean, there's a lot of things that I can do, but I feel that the tool here is available. Like, understand that what the limitations are. Understand that that you can utilize the tool for better. At least this is what I'm hoping for. Exactly what my slide says. I'm calling out and calling in for folks that want to make positive, more than uplifting. I can see documentaries that can still hit these beats. I can turn you into an ally. If you want to make a film that exposes the Zionist agenda inside of Hollywood, I welcome your participation. We can hit all the beats, because even in a documentary, you want the all is lost beat, you want a midpoint, you want to cover the introduction, you want to figure out what the theme is that you're going for, and we get to set it within a story pattern that makes sense. If you want to have an ensemble cast with multiple people talking about it, then it would be an issue institution. You want to have people that are exposing it, the group, the choice, the sacrifice. Like if you go over that segment, you could take any one of these story patterns and we can make it formulate and fit inside of there, with one clarification. There's an A story and a B story. So the A story might be the institutionalized, the B story might be a why done it tale. You can have that. So there are a lot of movies, like you have a Golden Fleece is the A story, but there's a buddy love tale as the B story. So that's a little more fuel for people putting their calculations together.
Yeah, it's like we expose all this stuff all the time, and it's like, oh, you didn't mention Jews or Zionists or this or that. Oh, you must be one. Yeah, because a Danish name like Jan, it's like, yeah, okay, So anyway.
When I was just presenting, I saw that, I know I kind of mentioned that you might be in the detective, but you could equally be presented in the institutionalized tale, because you expose the group goal as a fraud. Did you see that? Like if you go back over that last section in institutional, you usually have a newbie who's invited to the group. That doesn't really relate, because you weren't necessarily invited into Spies in Academic Clothing or into the 60s or whatever. You more detective your way in there. But in an institutionalized tale, the group, the choice, and the sacrifice is you're exposing the group. You have that choice, and the sacrifice has this degree of alienation, shaming, blacklist.
Yeah, telling the truth. It's like, wow, you lose like 60 of your professor friends all in one day because you published an article that exposed an entire academic field as incompetent or complicit. And then they all ridicule you and name call and how dare you expose our incompetence? We're alienating you. You're out there now. You know.
Well, let's get you back to Life is Great, and we can put it in that light.
There you go. All right. Anything else to add?
No, I really enjoy it. I think we want feedback from the audience if they want to go into any additional detail, deeper into character or plot, or if we kind of take some time going through each of the story patterns. I do want to especially leave it clear for people is that if they do have projects and they're interested, they can go to mythmatrix.com. They can sign up for the intensive. They can reach out to me on Facebook, Bryan Nova Brey. They can also find MythMatrix on Facebook if they want to, and to reach out, because I'm interested in taking this material as an open source and having more folks start to play with it, and see what kind of stories they want to make and produce, not only in media, but we can also have conversations about life story chapters, either that they live through or that they want to live into. So there's that aspect of it. So that's my request, is to reach out, connect with me, because by having input, I can make further iterations.
So Joe, you can just send him a message, since you guys, like cross message each other and post all the time.
yeah, totally can.
Calling him out,
Then I will leave one last gem for the researchers and the thinkers and the guys that really jump into this. I want to share what I'm most excited about, because as I've tested MythMatrix over the years, I try to kind of add new modules and go, well, does this fit into the 5 pairs? Okay, it doesn't really fit. And then I'll throw it out and I'll try something else and then I'll throw it out. Is that I have had a breakthrough by applying the big 5. If folks out there know what the big 5 are, of the core personalities, it has neuroticism, openness, agreeableness, extroversion. I'm not rattling them off right now, but here's a question, and I don't know, bonus points or anything. If you can guess of those big 5, how they line up with the 5 pairs of story patterns, because they do. And that's what I'd leave it with. A challenge for the audience.
All right. And thanks, everyone, for your supporting the show. Thanks for donations. I don't know if anybody donated during the show tonight, but hopefully somebody did. Thanks also to those of you who sent your Christmas cards and donations. I appreciate it. Thanks. Looks like Greg for that. I really appreciate that. See you all next week. Happy holidays and wintertime. Take care, Bryan. Have a great week, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Cool. Well,